Welcome back to the Response Drivers Podcast, where we feature top marketing minds and dig into their inspiring stories. Learn how these leaders think and find big ideas to push your results and sales to the next level. Now, let's get started.
Hey, I'm Rick Rapé, host of the Response Drivers Podcast. Here we dive deep with marketing executives, experts, and innovators to uncover how they approach targeted marketing and use data-driven strategies to acquire and retain customers. We'll talk about what's working, what's changing, and how we can stay ahead in an evolving marketing landscape. Response Drivers is brought to you by RPM Direct Marketing. RPM helps companies develop hard-hitting direct mail creative and utilize advanced testing and marketing methodologies so that you can fully optimize your marketing performance to drive more sales and exceed growth expectations. With a proven track record, RPM delivers smarter, more profitable direct mail solutions so you can turn your programs into a predictable, efficient sales channel. Check out rpmdm.com to learn more. My guest today is Michael Baer. Michael is an experienced, growth-focused fractional chief marketing officer and marketing leader with over 30 years of marketing and operational leadership, and a track record of driving strategic insight, superior creativity, and executional excellence to accelerate growth. Michael leverages his diverse end-to-end experience to help companies turn their marketing into greater value for their organizations. After decades leading teams and marketing organizations, large and small, Michael is now a fractional CMO in the revenue growth practice at TechCXO, a leading-edge professional services firm that has provided experienced C-suite professionals on demand to deliver strategic and functional consulting services for over 20 years. All right. Thank you for joining me today, Michael.
Huh? Thank you, Rick.
A lot of experience to summarize in a few paragraphs. It's always difficult. I know you primarily engage as a fractional CMO with startups and early stage growth companies and PE-backed companies. Can you talk a little bit more about what kinds of companies you partner with and tell us more about where your specialty lies?
Sure, Rick. The ideal customer profile does tend to be in the small to mid-size growth phase company. Often I like to say these are companies that have gotten somewhere, but they recognize that what got them to where they are today is not the same model the model and approach that's going to get them to 6x, 10x, 20x that. And so they recognize they need some help to professionalize the way they go to the market, some of the other C-suite roles, their approach to finances and such, and they don't need that full time. So for example, I'm a chief marketing officer, so they recognize that they could use some strategic leadership. They could use the help to develop plans and approaches and ways to more systematically and programmatically drive their growth levers. But again, they don't need it full time, and or perhaps in some cases they can't afford it full time. And so I'll go in again, often to very early stage companies, but also sometimes they're companies that have gotten somewhere, or maybe even decades old, but have found that they could use some help in either recharging or driving new growth. Mm-hmm. I have been focusing my practice on the healthcare sector, health tech, digital health, med tech, but have been a B2B CMO and marketing leader for, again, 10 years prior to going into consulting.
Tell me a little bit more about how you made the transition from the world of advertising to becoming a fractional CMO.
Yeah, I got out of school and I dove into advertising. It was a great combination to me at the time of both business and strategy with kind of right-brained creativity and innovation. And I spent over 20 years in advertising. I began for over 20 years in New York, working my way up to big agencies, working on strategic businesses like consumer packaged goods and global businesses.
Mm.
But what I like to think about my time in advertising is I purposefully curated a horizontal path across all of advertising, from big strategic packaged goods through digital focused independent creativity, through even media work. And the reason was I always felt like I loved the work, but I didn't love the ads. Like I felt like I loved understanding businesses. I loved digging into the DNA of a business, of a brand, of a customer, and developing strategic approaches, big, exciting strategic approaches. And I always tried to drive my clients to build holistic approaches to activating those strategies, but ended up literally just making ads because that's what we were, an advertising agency. And so
Mm.
I always felt that my drive was to be a more holistic, full perspective marketeer. And
Mhm.
I made the pivot from agency initially as a CMO of a marketing services company, and then pivoting into other B2B businesses as a CMO.
You've coined the term stratecution, and I wanted to ask you a little bit more about what that means and how it applies to modern marketing strategies.
I came up with the term, now it's going on 20 years ago. And I would say the term itself has evolved in my own mind. And I think depending on where your company and your business is, and the way it approaches business strategy, go to market strategy, and marketing and planning, and then ultimately implementation, you may
Mhm.
even view it with a different lens. But I came into it because I spent a lot of time working on highly what I would call strategy focused packaged goods, consumer packaged goods businesses. And I spent a long time uh, at one point in my career working for a company called, for Unilever, which, I mean, obviously, and
Mhm.
they're known as a very strategic marketer. And so we would spend, I mean, a year developing a strategy. We'd do some consumer research. We'd do some focus groups. We'd develop concepts. We'd do some concept testing. We'd test those concepts with expressions of the concept, et cetera, over time, uh, and with great rigor. And
Mhm.
often we develop amazing strategic ideas and really, imp- in, you know, exciting expressions of those strategies with creative ideas.
Mhm.
But what I found was we'd end up the we'd end up not being able to, the client and the agencies not be able to really activate those creative strategies and creative ideas in the market, that
Mhm.
due to a lack of either creating holistic approaches, thinking 360, driving great omnichannel, as you would call it, execution of these campaigns, that they would not necessarily have the success. And we'd look across the aisle. I ended up competing with Procter and Gamble's products, working in household products and personal care products, and we'd see that Procter and Gamble, it would seem to us, would not have the most brilliant strategy and the most exciting creativity, but they would execute the hell out of it. And you'd see it everywhere, and it would be fully fleshed out at every consumer touch point. And what I found was, we had great strategy, but not great execution. They would have not great strategy, but really good execution. And kind of initially, my feeling was that strategy, that most people, certainly in the world I was living in, would look at strategy as this like kind of paramount pinnacle of the work we do, and it would be done by us, the smartest people, and then we'd hand, as if you'd hand the strategy off to some execution elves, and then it would just get done by itself. Or
Execution
I'd like
elves.
to,
We all need those
yeah, we
execution
all need
elves.
execution. No, but I would almost feel like they thought that you just take strategy, or maybe even I'd call it like sort of idea, put it as if it's a snowball, and you could take it
Right.
from the top of a mountain, push it down the hill, and it would just happen by itself.
Right.
And
No,
we
yeah, I
know, of
get it.
course, that doesn't happen. It's not at all happen. You need to have equal rigor on the execution side. So I became this, strategy and execution need to go
Yeah,
together.
for
And there are a lot
sure.
of people who will say similar things.
Yeah.
Tom Phillips, not Tom Phillips. Anyway, who talk, really eloquently about how important execution is. And so, I got to believe how important, you have to be as rigorous in your execution as you do in strategy.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, and especially in a digital world where strategy isn't making an ad like it used to be and putting it on television where people would see it, and that's all you need to do practically. It's, how do you place your ad? Who do you get it in front of? How do you retarget that? How else
Yeah.
do you follow it up? There's so many strategic decisions to make.
Yeah.
But what's interesting, so that kind of was my lens was strategy is so important, of course, but so is execution.
Yeah.
What's interesting now in the world I work in, um, especially with young companies, early stage companies, uh, VC backed companies. There's almost a belief that let's just get started with execution. And I can't tell you how many companies I come in contact with of really any uh, uh, at any point in their trajectory, but we'll
Hmm.
say, yeah, we've got a strategy, but you'll find they're in many cases just executing. So you've got
Yeah.
people doing
I was,
things.
I was just gonna say that I recently recorded a podcast episode with somebody that's absolutely specializes in startup marketing, and it was a lot of like, well, we try a bunch of things and figure it out as we go, and that's the strategy, is like rapid iteration.
Iteration, yeah.
Just go to
But
market and
I find that,
figure it out.
yeah, it's amazing. I find companies that do that think that that strategy and the time spent developing it is like a luxury and they don't have it, or that it's
Yeah.
wasteful and that your time is better spent doing things. And I just fundamentally disagree with that. I
Well,
think that even if you cut the time that you would spend, I do think the preciousness of the Unilever days of 9 months of strategy development, we can't do that. But I think
yeah.
the amount of time spending just getting your strategy on paper,
Well, for
agreeing to it,
a lot of those companies are
is huge.
a lot of those companies are testing really small and just doing little tiny things. You and I, coming from a
Hmm.
background of like much bigger companies, I worked for AT&T for 10 years and helped them build their direct mail sales channel. And of course, everything we did was very strategic testing in small
Hmm.
quantities before we like rolled things out, because we were rolling things out on such a gigantic scale that, you had to test it
True,
first. So
but I
when it's
still don't agree.
everything's smaller, they take more risks, and it's just way, this is a different mentality. That tech company sort of fail fast mentality has
Yeah,
definitely crept into the marketing world as
no,
well.
no question, no
Yeah.
question. I just don't think it. I think activating and even testing in any way without setting a strategic foundation
Yeah.
is still wasteful. It's like, and I like to just say, it's like getting in a car and not knowing where you're going and expecting it to arrive there by just turning and turning.
Yeah.
It's just you're going to burn a lot of gas and waste a lot of time.
I
And
agree
so
on 100%.
understanding, I mean,
Yeah.
at some point you understand at least who you're trying to reach, right? So who are
Yeah.
they? What are their needs? What are their challenges? Where do they go
Yeah.
for those solutions? What are their expectations? And then
Yeah.
what are
Well,
what are we offering them? I mean, if you don't spend time like at least putting that on paper, I
yeah.
don't understand what you expect to accomplish.
In our world of direct mail marketing, a lot of startup companies will throw out a direct mailer, and they'll just do one idea, one piece of creative, one
Right.
offer, and one list, and they send it out and they hope for the best. And it's like, if it works, great. If it doesn't work, well, direct mail doesn't work. But that's not really a very strategic approach at all. We always focus on, let's test multiple different offers,
Hmm.
different
Hmm.
messages, different. So testing becomes the strategy, which and the overall process of testing, learning, optimizing is so critical to like the success of direct mail. So some digital channels seem to work pretty well with the like let's try one and iterate or but other things
Uh,
like direct mail, it's
yeah,
too expensive. You have to have a strategy
yeah.
or you can't maximize the effectiveness of it.
But I'm still even saying above that. Like I think iterating once you have
Yeah.
a strategy, of course, test and control, A/B test,
Yeah.
understand what's working and optimize. That's the rigor. That's the stratecution of digital marketing
Yeah.
that I fully endorse wholeheartedly. I'm
Yeah.
saying taking a step back from that, the core of who is your persona, what problem are you solving for them, what's your positioning, what's your your purpose, what's your
Yeah.
brand or your company's kind of purpose. These things, I feel like fundamentally need to be set down in writing. Doesn't mean there won't be a let's iterate to an extent, but without that in writing, I don't think. And then doing a brief for those things. To your point about you can test direct mail, but like I believe that all execution, tactics, call them
Hmm.
all tactics that you have should have some sort of brief. Meaning, why are we using this? What do we
Hmm.
expect to achieve from it? How will it, work? Because you want to be able to look at the results through the lens of, or even before you get results. I mean, if you're using external vendors and they come back with a here's our idea
Yeah.
for what we should put out there, and you don't have a brief to like hold up and say does it deliver on that, you're just going to be making a judgment based on do I like it or not, and that's not necessarily the barometer you should be using.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. We have to work with clients to develop that kind of strategic direction.
I can't tell you how many times I've worked with, say, like a web design firm to develop a website for an early stage company, and I'll hand them a brief, and they'll be like, "Oh my god, I don't really
We
ever
never get
get
this.
these."
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
so you're kind of guessing. I mean, it's and I agree with you. There's some
Yeah.
deep seated feeling of need amongst these, early stage companies where we need to create activity. And I
Hmm.
also think that maybe as a human species, we've gotten to where activity is viewed as a win in and of itself. If we just do stuff, and it shouldn't be like there's so much activity that almost you're contributing to noise if you don't ensure that it's to the right people with the right message on the right
Yeah.
strategy, developing your brand, fitting in
Yeah.
with the rest of the things you do. The other thing is this that I see all the time is there's a no holistic approach. I know it sounds like a big word, but the truth is marketing is not, or your brand is not it's not a series of one-offs. It needs to feel like a cohesive brand. So if you do, as you say with you guys, direct mail, it should be, okay, what else might a customer see, feel, hear, connect with, engage with
Hmm.
across their, we all call it the customer journey, but across their journey, it should feel like it was almost intended and fits together at some. But when you're doing all these things one off, they could, they may not even look like the same brand. It may not even ring a bell in your head. You've seen something, felt something, done something, engaged with something from that same company. The way
Yeah.
things are built so fragmented and one off.
Yeah, we appreciate it when our clients have a strong brand guidelines and brand position and where they've worked with a company that and built all that infrastructure. We utilize that and then we it gives us sort of something to latch onto, a foundation for building the marketing assets that go out and go to market with a strong call to action and but we're building it on the right foundation where we're tying in with everything else that they're doing. So that
I
makes a lot
like
of
the way you
sense.
use the foundation. I mean, I think there's certain analogies that I think we should ensure that people understand because they ring true. I mean, it's like building a house in a lot of ways. You build a foundation first. You don't start by putting in doors and windows or things that look pretty. You know, you got to build that foundation or it won't stand up.
So let me ask you another quick question about you've worked extensively with healthcare companies. We were talking about startup companies, but now I'll shift gears and to ask you a question about healthcare companies. So what unique challenges and opportunities have you encountered, in working in that sector?
I mean, there are a lot of uniquenesses to it. And at the same time, I think the fundamentals of marketing hold true. I like to joke around and say marketing and sales are really dumb simple. It's like understand your customer and their needs as well as you can and find out how to serve them and address them in your marketing and you
Yeah.
will succeed. Like, I mean, I think that to a degree is the same in a lot of places. With, some of the differences in healthcare are obviously there's lots of regulation and compliance things that make it a little different and challenging, both in how you talk about it and how you make promises and how you share information.
Mm-hmm.
And then also you have a complex ecosystem of users and end users and customers. So, especially like, for example, I do a bunch of work in medical devices that get sold into hospitals or just like, let's say on the provider side. And so you've got potentially buyers and sometimes committees of buyers. You also have the user, which is generally a physician or a technologist, and then you've got an end user, ultimately a patient, and so that can get complicated. And a lot of times, I'll work with companies, and I won't say they'll lose sight, but there won't be unanimity or clarity around who are we really building a benefit or a story or a value proposition for, because there are benefits across that ecosystem. I mean, there's an end user, for example, like I said, there's a user, meaning a doctor, and there could be, or a provider, and there could be real value in this devices, how it helps them, be it do their job better, uh, have a faster, do something faster so that they can reduce some sort of administrative or burden aspect of their job, or give them some sort of job satisfaction. It may just be better to use. But then there's also could be financial aspects or enterprise level aspects that are benefits, or is it an outcome for a patient? So that can become complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Not complicated, just clarifying that and understanding that. And I think there's a lot of isms that have traditionally been thrown around that made maybe the hunt for those benefits less important. And I think now there's just so much noise and clutter, and that breaking through is more challenging. That I think the need to really find insight in what benefit, what value are you offering a buyer and or user? And that's not different than the rest of non-healthcare. I think that's always critical. But I think the major changes that have gone across healthcare, a lot of it accelerated by COVID and kind of the remote aspect of medicine, when salespeople couldn't go into doctors' offices anymore for a little while. And so I think that accelerated
Hmm.
a lot of digitization of the go-to-market, and that's led to a tremendous amount of noise and clutter. So it's just making it harder. It's interesting. It's kind of went this big bell curve where all of a sudden everybody could leverage the digitization of marketing and the go-to-market was a bit slow in healthcare. I think you probably have heard that.
Mm.
And it was a fast track to speeding that up. And initially it was great. Companies could reach, their buyers, their users, those they wanted to prescribe their drugs, for example, digitally, but there was so much, and meetings and events went on demand and went to webinars and things like that. And that was a great way to do business. But all of a sudden there was so much that now it's becoming harder and harder. I mean, you talk to Some doctors say they get, 500, 1,000 emails a day. There's all kinds of, noise out there. So it's harder and
Yeah.
harder now to break through in these ways. So that's one of the challenges in this space.
Yeah.
But not unlike every other, which we talked
Right.
about in the intro, Rick, about how, in a weird way, your world, um, tangible, real
Yeah.
mail, physical mail,
Yeah.
which was kind of old, and digital email
Yeah.
now it's becoming a way to break through.
I think, based on what, based on everything I'm hearing about, the number of digital messages that we all get hit with every day, um, people's rising skepticism, and there's real trust issues with email.
Mm,
There's so much
yeah, fraud,
fraud in email
phishing,
that
and yeah. Mhm.
and direct mail, as it wasn't always this way, but now direct mail is much more trusted, and it's harder to create and harder to send. So when you do get something physical, it's more trustworthy because there's
Yeah,
not as much junk there. There's not as much
exactly.
stuff there. So
Well, it is
yeah,
ironic, right? And our mailboxes are so less full than they used to
yeah,
be, that it has bigger, what do you call it?
yeah.
Mailbox value when it hits. I
Yeah,
don't,
it can. I
it
mean,
can,
if
yeah,
we do it right, that's true. We
right.
can get noticed and get people to engage with it. And I was talking to someone recently too, and just saying like it's different when we can put an offer and make it a tangible thing, like a certificate or a
Mm.
voucher or a coupon or things like that, where it feels like, oh, this is worth something. If I throw it away, do I really want to throw it away? It's a little bit different sort of thought process. They've studied the neuroscience of direct mail versus digital, and they found that direct marketing, direct mail actually lights up a whole different area in your brain.
Mm.
So it's a completely different experience. So we've done some interesting things for in the healthcare space for direct marketing, including um, sending gift baskets, believe it or not, out to
Yeah,
doctors
sure.
in an
Right.
entire area, and that was for like a spinal center, announcing to the doctors that would be referring patients to a new facility. So
During
um,
COVID, we did, I was working on a program where we had a webinar that had been an in-person, prior to COVID, had been an in-person event. And
mhm.
so we sent everybody a meal. We sent them, I can't remember if it was an actual meal we sent, or did we send them a certificate that they could order their own. But the idea was, hey, we're all
Yeah,
watching this together,
a
and
box
let's at
lunch or
least
something like that.
have
Yeah,
a
that's perfect.
lunch. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What's one marketing tool or resource that you can't live without? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, I think the two things that two or three things that I say are part of that foundation are: one is develop a persona
Uh-huh.
based on as much actual either research or time spent with your customer that you can possibly do. Now, in some cases, it's literally Googling and online time if you can't actually get to your customer, or you don't have time, because in the fractional world, sometimes it's
Yeah.
what can you do quickly. Um, but I think putting pen to paper on, again, I keep talking about the customer and understanding their needs and their challenges and their expectations and how you can
Mhm.
help. I think that's like a tool that is worth its weight in gold, as is then trying to map out this customer journey,
Mhm.
pain points, friction points across their, going from I'm unaware to I'm considering, all the way to, and that helps you when you're developing a go-to-market plan, or a marketing plan, or even just a series of tactics if you want to just dumb it down.
Mhm.
And then I really think you fundamentally have to have, what is your positioning, and we can call it value prop. You could call it your main message. And it's astonishing to me how many companies don't really have that. They'll say, "We know it. We've been doing this long enough. We get it," or have something that reads like a product message.
Hmm.
And so I think that's critical. Those are like, so you asked, what are my, marketing? I don't know if you were talking about marketing tactics or something, but I think those are the foundations that then
That
you can go off and create anything, and so, and frankly, that's what I do a lot is I'll go into companies that, have revenue, have begun to, get somewhere, like I said, but I think they feel like they're spinning or juggling spinning plates, and it just doesn't feel like there's a rhythm, that there's a that things are momentum, that they're growing on each other.
yeah.
Um,
Well, I think the
and
answer to
so,
the answer that you gave was perfect, and I get it. It's like you're working on the foundational elements, and those become then the core, like we said in building a house,
yeah,
where you build everything else on top of those things because that fits the overall plan, and it makes perfect sense to me. I think it's an area
great.
where yeah, we see companies struggle with that because it seems like a lot of companies or some companies that we work with have products that do a lot of things
Mm,
and they have a hard time like kind of
yep.
boiling it down to the key message and a way to convey the value like quickly and easily. Um, if there's too many features, it's hard to talk about the features and the benefits, or it's hard to focus on the benefits and not talk about the features, I guess you'd say.
No,
So
exactly. I think that is a real challenge, is that early stage companies in particular, but all companies are so, I mean, either they're so enamored with or they're so focused on selling their product or
hmm
service that
hmm
they lose sight of the customer. And, your positioning, your story, your narrative, the value you offer your customer is not your product, it's the solution they need, it's the value they get, it's the benefit they are looking for.
Yeah.
And yeah, so often it's like you said, well, we could, we do this and we do that and we do this. It's like, stop saying we, what does it do for them? And boiling it into something powerful, that
Yeah.
the features, the attributes, those product benefits aren't unimportant. They're just not the lead story generally. And they're also not what the customer buys. They buy, the classic marketing story. Nobody needs a half-inch drill bit.
I was
What they
just gonna
need is
say
a
the
half
same
inch.
thing.
What they need is a half-inch hole. And so,
I was about to say that exact same thing. Isn't that funny? Our great minds are thinking alike. Um, this could be a can of worms, but I'm going to ask this question, and hopefully we can keep it short because I think we should wrap up here pretty quick. We've covered a lot of ground. Where do you see the field of marketing heading in the next 5 years? The big question.
it is a big question, and I know everybody is talking about AI, and I think
Yeah.
AI is a game changer. I'm a somewhat of a counter conventionalist, or a contrarian in some ways, about lots of stuff. That doesn't mean I'm not a forward thinking progressive, which I am, but I like to not just jump on bandwagons. One of my favorite
Hmm.
quotes of all time is a Mark Twain quote that says, "When you find yourself in the majority, it's time to pause and think." So I kind of find that to be the case. And I think there are a lot of people who are jumping on an AI bandwagon and using it not so great, because I think there's a lot of question in my mind about some of the utility. Having
Mm.
said that, there's tremendous, obviously, opportunity. And of course, I use AI 25 times. So, having said that, I use it 25 times a day. Um, but what I think it's doing best right now is um, speeding up tasks that used to take a long time.
Hmm.
And so I view it from, how can it, like, I do a lot of customer interviews. I talk to clinicians a lot as part of projects, and I'll record that stuff, and I can use it to find quotes quickly. I can use it to help me summarize things. I can use it to help me ideate on things quickly. I find it not great at writing yet. And I think that what it's doing, unfortunately, to marketing is lowering the bar to the creation of crappy content. And so I see a lot of crappy content right now. So I'm hoping that we all don't start just creating AI advertising and marketing everywhere, because I don't think yet it's doing the service to, what's needed, meaning how do we understand, get insight, and create things that actually do engage people, especially in this world of clutter. Like, I feel like one of the worries I have is that there will be only infinitely more clutter because we're made it so much easier to make stuff. And so
that's true.
So that's one worry I have for the future, is that it's just going to be if we think there's noise now, particularly online, there's going to be 10x it. And so how do you then break through?
Yeah, it's easy to produce long form content, and then you can feed it into ChatGPT and say, summarize this for me and boil it down. So I think AI is super interesting, but it still needs human intervention. It still needs human human help to optimize and make it really create the kinds of things that are really worthy of putting out into the world. But it certainly is accelerating everything that we do, isn't it?
And every day there's, a new improvement, new breakthrough. So we will see.
Yeah.
We will see. Obviously I'm bullish on it, but I think it needs to be used the right way. I agree with you. It's a human using it can be more effective. It's less about taking people, doing the work of people.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. This has been really interesting, and I appreciate your time. For our listeners that are interested in learning more or connecting with you, what's the best way for them to reach out and get in touch with you?
Just send me an email. It's michael.baer, that's BAER, at TechCXO.com. I love talking and networking with people. Happy to set up time to chat, and whether you've got a challenge or a problem you'd like to chat about, or just want to network and expand your network, I'm happy to connect.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. I really appreciate it, and I will be in touch and talk to you soon.
Thanks, Rick. Good talking to you.
That's a wrap for this episode of Response Drivers. Thanks for tuning in. If you found today's insights valuable, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the show, we'd love it if you left a review. Got a question or a topic you'd like us to cover? Just drop us a message at responsdrivers@rpmdm.com. Until next time, keep driving response and making your marketing work smarter.